does it. Let's talk a little bit about Tesla. These guys are crushing it. I'm amazed and familiar with a lot of the problems they've had along the way, and I'm very impressed with how Elon Musk has solved them. But in the last couple of months, it's become apparent that they're just crushing it, hitting it out of the park. In June, they delivered for the second quarter 95,000 cars, which is an astonishing number given where they came from with their Tesla Roadster, and the entire run of that was 2,400 cars. They were a boutique automaker that has gone to become a production automobile manufacturer. Some of you are concerned about the high level of executive turnover. I'm not at all. At the center of any successful entrepreneurial organization is a detail-oriented, detail-obsessed, obsessive-compulsive disorder, authoritarian asshole. And if you don't know who that is in your organization, I would suggest that it is you. And working for such people is exhausting and damaging for life in a very odd way. Once you work for an Elon Musk or a Steve Jobs or someone like that, nobody locally here, you learn to really dislike that life and that pressure and that sort of egomaniacal personality. And so you tend to leave at the first opportunity, and you spend pretty much the rest of your life trying to find a position where you have the same sense of mission and purpose and drive and excitement that you got there. But you're not worse off. You're just kind of melancholy at everything you do after that, because it doesn't have that magic thing where we're on a march to change the world. And that's what you get with Elon Musk. Now, the part you get when you leave is everybody knows about this. If you worked at Tesla and you worked for Elon Musk, and you're asking if we have a position open for you, the answer may be no, but come sit down, have a cup of coffee, let's talk. If we hit it off, we'll just set up to do whatever we need to do where we do have a position for you. And by the way, did I mention we'll pay you twice what Elon did? And so don't lose any sleep spending your time in prayer for these poor souls that used to work for Elon Musk. They had a lot of hard days, but they're kind of good to go from then on, and I haven't heard of any of them who didn't go on to a position of greater responsibility and a lot more money because everybody wants them. Beyond that, they're crushing it on so many fronts, I can't quite enumerate them. The Tesla just announced a 3 gigawatt battery pack. This is our 15 kilowatt battery pack. They got a 3 gigawatt with a 1.5 gigawatt bidirectional inverter in it, which is what we're doing here. What does that mean, Jack? That's not anything. They've been doing big battery packs and for utility companies. Why is this a big deal? It's a big deal because it's about 60% of the size of those. It's kind of packaged, and the costing and the installation of this is directly aimed at the installation of new microturbine gas peaker plants. And here's the economics of it. In any cost comparison, you get the Tesla 3 gigawatt pack up, or a field of them, as in the San Diego Pacific Gas and Electric installation in Moss Canyon, to build a big plant. You get it up in a third of the time for less money. And when it operates, it responds to changes in load on your system in milliseconds, not seconds or minutes. And when you're running a natural gas peaker plant, you're using natural gas. You gotta pay for it. The battery pack is free energy. Well, what a nonsense thing to say, Jack. Well, actually, it's not. Because the whole thing with peaker plants is to deliver power when you need it. And one of the problems in load management that utilities have is at 3 a.m., they still have to keep the nukes and the coal power plants going. You don't get to switch them off. So they're producing too much power and in some cases they pay people to take the power at that time of day. So you can fill your batteries up then. Obviously, during the peak hours of solar, certainly in California, they have an overabundance of power. But on a 24-hour cycle, they never have to pay for the power going into the battery at all. This is enormous. The Shanghai gigabit plant, Elon Musk is astonished. This thing has gone up so fast, he's going to be in the embarrassing position of having deliberately set a target date, and this is what he does, that's impossible to meet, to drive his people to put them up as fast as they can, get it in operation as fast as it can, and their success is measured by the degree that they fail. How is he going to publicly be able to address the fact that these guys met the target date? That means he failed as a manager and did not set as aggressive enough of a target date for the Shanghai factory. And face it, it's just a fact of life. The Chinese have a better work ethic and less bureaucracy than we do. And that plan will be up and going by the end of the year. The other astonishing thing that he's going to discover is that his production costs on the car are going to be a lot less than he thought they would. He's counting on some savings there. Double it, Elon. So these guys are crushing it on every front. Egregiously so. If you're not an idiot, this is like astonishing. Motor Trend magazine this past month named Tesla 2013 Model S the car not of the year, but the ultimate car of the year, meaning the best car out of their 70 years they celebrate this year. Publication starting in 1949. From the beginning, a huge part of their brand has been the car of the year. Originally, a 1949 Cadillac Model 62 sedanette. And going from there, it has been a big deal ever since. A little known fact, I've never been a car guy. But if I wanted to know what the best car ever built was, I would go to where the car guys are. And as a happenstance of being a publisher for 30 years, I admire successful magazine franchises. And Motor Trend has got one. They just own it. Everybody now does a car magazine, and most of them have aped the car of the year. That don't matter. They're all number 2. Motor Trend is the only one that matters. This is where young men deeply addicted to automotive pornography go to get their stuff. They're car guys, they love cars, they eat cars, they breathe cars. And if you could get a job at Motor Trend magazine, you're at Ground Central for cool cars. They just own it. And they have just publicly stated that the Tesla Model S in its 2013 rollout model, not the P100D, not ludicrous mode, the 2013 Model S is the car of the year. That's pretty cool. Now let's talk about the stock market. My grandfather incited and motivated me to invest in American Telephone and Telegraph stock when I was 13 years old. Now, he's not like most grandfathers. He didn't give me shares in AT&T. He convinced me to take my lawn mowing money and buy shares in the AT&T Shareowner Dividend Reinvestment Program. Because once you got in that program, you could put up to $3,000 a quarter directly with them. And this was in the days where broker's fees were a couple $100. But you could invest directly in AT&T, and the dividends that they had paid for over 100 years went right back into buying more stock. Of course, when they dismembered AT&T 20, 30 years later, I kept selling phone company stocks thinking I was all cashed out, and would find out I still had more buried somewhere in the bowels of the system. There were 7 Baby Bells in the original company, and then there'd be some left over from dividends that had been plowed back in I didn't even know about. And I sold that stock for a year and a half. I could not get it all done. It just wouldn't go away. So I've been playing the stock market a long time. I've been long, I've been short. I've shorted stocks. My nature is to be optimistic. And so I like to root for people I think are going to be winners. And my position in technology has allowed me a lot of kind of inside information and an insight into who's going to be a winner and who's going to be a loser. And some of the flashiest companies with some of the sexiest stuff, I can look right at them and tell you, pow, walking dead. And another one that just doesn't look like it's got a chance, I take a look at it and say, man, I think this Amazon book selling thing is going to be a deal. I know it sounds goofy, but I think they can sell books online. In fact, I think they can sell anything online. That was my position in 1996. And thank you, Jeff Bezos. I've enjoyed every damn dollar of profit involved in that many times over. I had been kind of disconcerted by the record levels of Tesla's short interest all along. But I started taking a look at it in the last 6 months. We're over all the panics. We're over all the insurmountable hurdles that I was sure they would surmount, but they were legitimately hurdles. Most entrepreneurs can't make the transition to running a large corporation. And there's a lot of barriers. The automobile industry is not what most of you think. It has nothing to do with how much the parts cost or how much the labor costs. It actually has nothing to do with that. The fixed costs are so huge that the variable cost, marginal cost per car, doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that you can predict how many total units you'll sell to hit your break-even nut on building the machine that builds the machine. And it's a very complicated business. And one of the things that's interesting is people think these GM and Daimler and VW are unassailable. They go season to season and year to year, living on their ability to predict how many units of a specific model they can sell 5 years from now. And they're really good at it, except for one problem. If they miss, they're dead. If they're making billions of dollars, is no help at all. One big mistake, and they're out of business. And General Motors went out of business, you don't recall, in 2008. Over a credit crisis. There was nothing wrong with the cars. There's nothing wrong with the demand for the cars. They can't qualify people for the loans. And their numbers went bad. And people have forgotten. Yes, the government stepped in. Yes, the employees kept their jobs. You do understand that all the shareholders of GM didn't take a haircut. They lost it all. All of it. Their shares became worth nothing. And a year later, GM has the chutzpah to do another IPO and issue new shares, and all the GM shareholders now are not the ones that were there before. Car business is bad news, guys. It's hard work. Very complicated business, and you have to be able to predict the future. It doesn't have anything to do with your margin on the car. I see people talking about how much Tesla makes on each car. You know, you can calculate that if you know how many you sold. You can't calculate it on the future without knowing how many you will sell. So it's a very tough business. But that said, Tesla's passed all the big hurdles. They passed all the tests. They're winning. And they've always had a large short sale. Up over 20% of their float. That's an unnaturally high, an unusually high amount out against you. But they got to the end of 2018. They got over the 5,000 a week mark. They're hitting it. And all of 2019, the short sales gone up. Now, they did have losses and did have a disappointing quarter in the first quarter, and that's over these distorting tax credit subsidies. I've been against them all along. They're not for you. As soon as Tesla loses some, they simply cut the price of the car. They go to the manufacturer. You don't get them ever. You only think you do. That doesn't happen. As soon as the tax credit goes away, the price of the car comes down. The manufacturer got that credit all along. It's a scam. You thought you got a tax credit. You got nothing. But a whole bunch of people sucked that tax credit into the fourth quarter of last year out of the first quarter of this year to qualify for the full $7,500. But since that event and a very low stock price, that would have been a fantastic time for the shorts to sell off, to buy Tesla shares to cover their short sale. Pocket the difference and walk home with the money, honey. Little here for mama, shoes for the baby. And they did. About 2 million of them. 2 million shares. And it's gone from 24 million shares to 43 million since then, when we're past all the hurdles, when everything's going great. They're shipping to Europe, they're shipping to China. And now we're at a stupid level, a short sale. What's going on? Complicated story. Hard to get right. I did some graphs. I ran some numbers. I wasn't happy with them. I put them back. I ran them again. Yeah, that's probably closer. But I gotta get my thoughts organized before I do a video on this. Actually, as a 24-year-old titty blonde newscaster, television personality, I might have a little bit of a fail going on there. But I've been a writer for a really long time, and I developed quite a following when the internet was built, and quite a following when the EVs developed. And I've got exactly the following I want right now, believe it or not. But I got most of that as being a writer, not a video personality. It's never dawned on me that I was cute on TV. That vanity never did strike. But I can kind of cobble words together in print. Of course, nobody reads anymore. So I thought I would be able to do a blog, kind of set my thoughts in order, and then do the video. Did the blog on August 10th. Kind of put a little thing on Twitter, which I've got like, I don't know, 9 followers or something. This is almost like a private joke. And get some reaction from a few people. Well, it kind of took off. And the next thing I know, Zach and Jesse have done a video on my blog. Now here's the tough part. They did it better. They do my shit better than I do it. And just frankly a better take on it than I was going to video. As of this afternoon, they got 165,000 views, about 2,500 comments. They're just better than I am on this video thing. So I'm just going to put up their video. They did a video on my blog. I ought to be able to do a video on their video, right? We're just going to show it to you right now.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching In Depth
On Now You Know.
Sponsored by our friends at A Better Route Planner. You know, Bo is out there working his butt off every day to make sure that you can find your way home in your EV and type in waypoints, so if you want to pick something up on the way.
Yep.
And it works. 7 million times it's worked. And we're brought to you by ecoware.us, where you can get new designs every week. I'm wearing an old one. You're wearing a new one.
Yes. But I mean, if you've never seen these before, they're all
new to you. So head over to ecoware.us, where you're going to find new designs every week. They're all carbon offset, and we plant a tree for every purchase. And, you know, we're up to 300 trees planted. I'm feeling pretty pumped.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into this, Jesse. This is a conspiracy, folks.
Oh boy.
Gather in.
Conspiracy
Turn
theory.
the volume down low.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about Jack Rickard, and he wrote a blog post called The Tesla Conspiracy, or Am I a Dead Whistleblower?
So, who is Jack Rickard?
Well, Jack Rickard owns and operates EVTV Motorworks. And fun fact here, you can watch what's going on in his workshop on his live webcams. Check this out. It's happening right now.
Okay.
He has been building and converting EVs for decades. And as he puts it, we basically got out of converting EVs before we got to the early adopter stage. Basically, he was in this so long ago, doing it before anyone even knew what he was doing. Practically. He's probably forgotten more about solar PV, batteries, electric motors and car conversions than most people will ever know. So when he discusses a subject pertaining to EVs, I usually try and watch it and learn. So he has a YouTube channel, and although the shots are usually long and long-winded, they are highly informative and packed with info.
So this is a guy who really knows what he's talking about. He's been making electric cars for years. Before you could buy an electric car, he was converting electric cars so that people could enjoy an electric version of their favorite ICE cars.
Exactly. And we're going to go through some of the highlights of his letter here on In Depth, and we recommend that you read his whole letter, so the link is down below. So Jack starts it off with, in the case of Tesla, the car and the company, if you eliminate all other possible causes, what remains is the answer. And I have the increasingly uncomfortable feeling that not all is right with the world.
All right, so what is this conspiracy about?
Okay, so Jack starts off by stating some of the facts that you've probably heard on this channel many times before. The Model 3 won Detroit News Magazine's 2018 Car of the Year Award. It was also named Car of the Year by Popular Mechanics. March 2018 Automotive Excellence Awards, Auto Express Car of the Year 2019, Automobile Magazine 2018 Design of the Year, the Tesla Model 3, over and over again. And then, of course, 2013, rather shockingly named the Tesla Model S Car of the Year in Motor Trend, with the astonishing admission that since 1949, there was never a car like this.
Wow.
And then, as we've been talking about on the show, Motor Trend named the 2013 Tesla Model S as the ultimate car of the year, the top car of the year in 7 decades of publication, naming a car of the year every year. And Jack talks about this fact because in and of itself, this is incredible because Motor Trend is paid for by advertising and Tesla has never spent a dime on advertising.
Right.
So this alone is pretty astounding.
Yeah.
So that's part of the setup, right? That Tesla's cars are amazing. And he continues with this setup that Teslas are the safest cars. And he talks about how recently, as we reported, NHTSA's latest cease and desist letter that we talked about in the last show is some sort of governmental attempt to limit what you can say about a publicly funded and governmentally administered test.
And I mean, that's exactly what we were saying in Tesla Time News, is that Tesla is just trying to report on what NHTSA tested. They're not making any false claims about what NHTSA tested. They're simply telling the world what NHTSA tested, and NHTSA's like, don't say that.
Jack goes on to say, so my claim is that Tesla makes the best automotive vehicle on the planet, barring none, in all respects, including safety. It is just the best car ever built. And I would challenge anyone to demonstrate, even partially, that this is not so.
I mean, there are very, very few, if any, flaws with the Model 3.
So then Jack goes on, EVTV has largely ceased to convert ICE cars to electric drive, which was long ago our only reason for life. And Tesla was largely the reason. The Model 3 at $40,000 is a better car than I can do at $40,000.
So his whole life, and everyone who worked at EVTV, was to convert ICE cars to electrics. And basically he has stopped doing that because it now is cheaper to buy a brand new electric car than it is to convert an ICE car where you already have a car,
Right.
and all you have to do is put motor and batteries in it.
Right.
It's cheaper to just buy a brand new and fantastically amazing brand new EV than it is to convert.
So Jack goes on. Worse, it is kind of a one-sided launch. We covered the news of lots of different electric cars and most notably hundreds of VW press releases that never were actually cars. And the conclusion was that it just doesn't matter. Porsche and BMW were the only ones that had the right stuff to compete with Tesla, and they didn't. All else didn't matter and couldn't matter. And yes, Porsche's Taycan will launch this September 4th, and they are going to sell 30,000 or 40,000 of them, and they still won't matter. Tesla just owns it. And at this point, the moats of its battery technology and costing, its supercharger network, its online sales model, the over-the-air software updates, and much, much more put it so far out ahead that the other manufacturers are still announcing the coming Tesla killer, aimed at the 2013 Tesla Model S. Problem, it is 2019.
I don't even know how to put this any better than how Jack says it, so
Yeah.
I think I'll just let him speak for himself. That's fantastic, yeah.
He goes on, I'm at the point where if you don't have a Tesla logo on your car, you're not electric and don't matter. To the point that we are working furiously on things like an OBD2 port adapter for the Model 3 or reverse engineering Tesla batteries, not EV batteries, Tesla batteries for solar energy storage. I have a half-finished Cadillac Escalade conversion hanging in the air on a lift where it has hung for a year. But the blue sky for Tesla is essentially unlimited. They can sell all they make and make all they sell, starting at 360,000 units and topping out at 78 million. They are 0.46% of a $2.3 trillion market, and they appear, to my biased eye, to already own all of it.
So what he's saying there with the 78 million cars that they could sell is basically the car market on Earth. Because essentially, the way he sees it, and to a larger extent the way I see it, there's pretty much no reason to buy any other car.
Right, their closest competition hasn't even gotten up to a car that they made 6 years ago.
Right. And no car that we've seen that you can buy today is pretty much anywhere close in terms of what the Model 3 can do.
Right. So he goes on to say, if somebody doesn't do something pretty quickly, in the future, all automobiles will be Teslas. Hyperbole? I grow weak in the knees publicly repeating a prediction I have quietly been making for years. It is so unbelievable. All I can harvest from it now is ridicule. But you are not going to believe the big names and huge corporations that face unavoidable and absolute bankruptcy and dismemberment in the very near future. No government can save them. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs lost. Economic disruption and dislocation of unparalleled proportions. Office furniture available for 6 cents on the dollar. Not reorganization, but like Eastman Kodak, Sears, Kmart. Companies that could not fail and are already gone. Picture GM, VW, Daimler. The biggest, the best.
I think that, this is the kind of stuff that we've been talking about on this show. If you've been watching the show a really long time, a lot of these talking points seem awfully similar. How these big companies that seem just so insurmountable, so solidified, so impossible to go away, really do not have in any way, in any tangible way, any sort of competition to what Tesla is putting out.
Well, the other thing is these big companies are really good at one thing, which is telling you that they're really good companies. They never show a sign of weakness. And they never come out and the CEO's like, God, I don't know what to do with the company this year. Right. They don't do that. So when they do come out, you're like, wow, they seem so confident. Right. And so you're like, I guess they're going to succeed. They've got a plan. Look at history. That's not what happened.
Right.
So Jack continues. Let's take a look at the oil business. Currently, we are at 100 million barrels of oil used each day worldwide. 20 million here in the U.S. at $55 per barrel. That's about $5.5 billion per day. That's another $2 trillion world market business. As the percentage of all automobiles that are electric grows, the demand for oil will diminish. Fully 50% of all oil goes to road transport. That is $2.75 billion per day. And for every day that future is delayed, is another $2.75 billion. It would be a $2.75 billion win if the adoption of the electric car could be forestalled for 1 day. The incremental growth of the automotive market is, as I stated, inevitable and unstoppable. But for every day it is delayed, there are billions of dollars at stake. Literally, the clock is running at $1.9 million per minute on just that part of oil used by automobiles.
And I think that we're getting pretty close to the conspiracy.
This is getting to the heart of the argument, and what I love is that he's laying out a really important thing that we allude to on the show a lot, but he's giving some really hard numbers here, which is that if you're in the oil business and you're like, okay, so every day we can slow down Tesla is 2.75 billion, then you begin to see the scale with which they will want to slow it down.
Right. And the funny thing is that there's no stopping it anymore. There's no stopping it at this point, right? The cat is out of the bag. All of us, anyone who's ever been inside a Tesla, knows exactly why it is the best car on earth,
Right.
and why I would never switch back to oil. Even if I didn't really care about the planet or the environment, because there are many of you who have messaged us directly and said, I don't care about the planet or the environment, but I love Tesla because it's the best freaking car in the world.
Right.
The cat is completely out of the bag. There is no going back to oil.
That's a great point. We're not just driving these cars because we're hippies and tree huggers. You can take that out of the equation if you want to, and you still win the argument. All right, let's go on to what he says next. Texaco bought the entire Ovonics nickel metal hydride battery business from General Motors with the patents, of course. They allowed this battery chemistry for camera and laptop batteries, but specifically refused to license it to anyone in larger sizes suitable for electric cars, and that continued until the patents ran out. By then, it didn't matter. The lithium battery was ascendant, but it absolutely delayed the development of electric vehicles by many years. Stanford Oveshinsky, inventor of this nickel metal hydride battery, died in 2012 at the age of 89, still deeply embittered by what General Motors and Texaco, later acquired by Chevron, had done to his baby. Its greatest potential use, and the use that Oveshinsky specifically developed it for, was never realized. They simply bought it and shelved it. Does that make sense? To spend hundreds of millions of dollars to acquire a promising technology and then shelve it and not worry at all about selling any products from it? Just park it, hold that thought.
So this is really where it's like oil has been dampening the electric car. It has been preventing its rise throughout history. And that's one just small example of where oil basically was like, it looks like you have some patents for an electric car using some new battery technology. We will pay you basically any amount of money to acquire that,
Right.
and to then not use it for electric cars.
And you can see how excited Oveshinsky would have been when he made the patent and had all these interested buyers and is like, yes, it's going to get involved in the automotive industry.
Yes. GM will use it, and
Yes.
and GM will make an electric car, of course.
And can you imagine his phone calls? Hello, GM, it's been a year, and just wondering how you're doing with the new nickel metal hydride battery I made.
Right. Oh.
Hello?
Hello? You sold it? You sold it to an oil company.
He must have been so confused for a few days where, gee, I guess maybe Texaco's going to make a electric car?
No, he did. He knew.
Yeah.
He knew that wasn't going to happen. And that, I think we are starting. This is. I think we don't even need to say anything else, and you can probably put the puzzle pieces together. But let's continue here.
So Jack goes on. Shorts don't behave this way. They sell high, buy low, and pocket the difference. That is, if they're in it to make money. These shorts keep doubling down, and they increase their sales as Tesla succeeds. At this point, you have a company that is growing its production at an exponential rate, growing its revenues at an exponential rate, has the best product in the entire market with unlimited demand in a market it owns outright just 0.46% of. It is the ultimate growth stock in the ultimate market with unlimited blue sky, room to grow. Oh, and did I mention they can raise any amount of money they like at any time on 3 days' notice? Their last 3 calls for capital have taken less than a week and were oversubscribed in all cases. They raised more money than they asked for. So, we have exponential growth into an unlimited market with unlimited capital ready and waiting to invest. What kind of moron bets against that? Well, the concept of them being a moron implies the assumption they are trying to make money in the first place. What if they had no desire to make money?
So keep in mind the over $2 billion a day of oil revenue, and then think about this company Tesla that's basically ready to just explode with the best. I mean, it's the best product on the market in terms of EVs. All of these things here. And why are the shorts shorting it so much? We already talked about the billions of dollars every day that oil is making from its oil business. And they know that every day that they can delay Tesla is literally billions and billions of dollars.
Right.
And so it seems like the shorts are specifically targeting Tesla
Right.
to lower the value of the stock, to make it harder for them to compete.
Right.
And don't we have like some kind of government body that would make sure that this sort of thing wouldn't happen?
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's called
great.
the Securities and Exchange Commission. But as Jack says, but the SEC can be bought, apparently. And while they investigate, fulminate, and litigate Musk's tweeting style, what starts to look like the largest stock manipulation in the history of the United States of America is going on as we speak. Is it possible they don't know about it? In a word, no. It is not possible that a stock swindle of this proportion could be going on without the express and direct participation of the Securities and Exchange Commission, charged by law with preventing it. Absolute corruption corrupts absolutely, to misquote a phrase. This level of stock manipulation, coupled with a funded and directed disinformation campaign, could conceivably drive Tesla to failure. And at $5.5 billion per day, simply delaying the inevitable is very profitable on a total expense of $10 billion. The payback period on that is less than 2 days.
Because basically, to short Tesla this much only costs $10 billion.
Right.
Which for oil is nothing. It's more money than you can even think of. And yet, it's enough to just be like, yeah, heck, short it.
Yeah.
Short it as much as we can.
Exactly.
And that's the scary thing. This is the conspiracy here. They're trying to prevent Tesla from succeeding. They're trying to push Tesla into failure just through these means, and not because of some problem with the markets. It's not like the market doesn't like Tesla.
Right. It's not like they could put $10 billion into making a better car. That's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to get more oil out of the ground. So they have to just misdirect. They have to somehow get this to slow down so they get more oil out of the ground. Right. So Jack goes on. I still see articles explaining why batteries feature more emissions than gasoline cars, all funded by industry groups and advocacies that 1 off, 2 off, or sometimes 3 off lead directly to oil companies. So paid for disinformation campaigns are an absolutely established mode of operation for these companies. Why would they hesitate at stock manipulation to foster fear, uncertainty, and doubt? And who in the auto industry would call them out on it? GM and Texaco conspired. There were no questions or unforeseens. It was a conspiracy to defeat the concept of electric cars. So as he's pointing out, this is exactly something that happened in recent history. It's happening again.
Right. And, for all the people who are just like, oh, I don't think that would happen. It's like, no, it would.
You wish it wouldn't happen.
Right.
That's what you're trying to say. When you say it wouldn't happen, you're thinking, what kind of world do we live in where this could happen? So I'm going to wish that it doesn't happen. Right. And it's sad, but it is happening. And that's a lot of money. And when you get that much money, lots of things happen that you wish wouldn't happen, unfortunately. And if you study history, you'll see that it happens over and over and over again. It's just happening now, and it's not history, it's actual now. So it's hard for you to realize oh, are we in history right now? Yes, we are. To wrap up, Jack says the following. $4.3 trillion combined annual market between autos and oil. A puny $10 billion in expense, not investment. And a 32% short interest suddenly makes all the sense in the world. It looks like the oil companies and automakers have no possibility of losing this one. In reality, they have no way to win it. One man has them totally surrounded, outnumbered, and outgunned. Elon Musk.
And I think that's the perfect wrap-up. I mean, it's really true. You have this one guy. And I know, I don't want to make it sound like it's just him. You have everyone working at Tesla, and they are working their butts off.
Yeah.
I'm not going to. So you have Tesla basically completely changing an industry, completely disrupting it. Okay, and we are just seeing the very beginning of it. But it is so clear. It is so absolutely and unquestionably clear that this is the direction that the auto industry has to move in at this point. There is, as more and more people see the Model 3, and that's the only thing really stopping it, is exposure. So many people have absolutely no idea what Tesla is, who it is, and if they have heard about it, they've heard just enough FUD to make them think, I don't want this. I'm going to continue living my life the way that I've been living it. I'm going to keep going to the gas station, and I'm going to keep getting oil changes, and I'm going to keep, having to pay extra money because they have to remove the water pump for whatever reason to fix the timing belt.
That's a really good point. We bumped into a guy the other day when we're shooting something who said, hey, is that one of those new Teslas? I heard they're really confusing and hard to drive. And it was like, where'd you hear that
Right.
from?
It's the most simplest car to drive in the world. You sit in it, you press the brake, you put it in drive, and you drive it. This guy then proceeded to get into a car, which if it were in the wrong gear and he started it, it would just start flying backwards.
Right.
Like, that's just a thing that could happen in his car. It can't happen in mine. I can pull up somewhere in my car. Forget to hit park. Forget to put it in park. I can hop out of the car. The car will automatically know to put it in park.
Right.
It won't roll away. It won't pin me against a wall until I die. It won't do any of that. I can leave it in my house. I could drive it into the living room and play a game on it because I can do that. And everyone in my house won't die from carbon monoxide poisoning. The opposite is not true of the car that the man just got into and drove away with.
Right.
It's the simplest car in the world.
And you might be thinking to yourself right now, well, the car companies must watch your show, Zach and Jesse, and know that it's over for them, so why are they even still doing this shorting of the stock? But here's the thing. As Jack pointed out, Tesla has 0.46% of the market. And to get to a tipping point in most markets, you have to get to about 2.5%. So from their perspective, they're looking at this going, all right, we're still okay, folks. It's halftime, and we've kept the other team to quite a limited number of points. If we can just go back in there in the second half of this game, we can pull this out. That's what they're hoping for. They're hoping we don't get to the tipping point where it becomes a household thing where everyone just buys an EV. So here's where you guys come in. Mm-hmm. We can make this happen. We're so close. All we need to do now is get butts in seats, spread the word. We need to make sure that message gets spread because there's so much FUD out there. There's so much misinformation that people aren't allowing themselves to even experience EVs. Right. The people we bump into have so much FUD in their head. They're just like, I don't even think I want to get in this thing.
It's like they're from a different planet. It's like you've encountered someone from the Spanish Inquisition. As soon as you bring up this electric car thing, people are put off. And it's sad because it would be really great to have people excited about it. And there are some people who can get very excited about it very quickly. And those people, by and large, are young people and extremely open-minded people just around the world.
That's a great point. If you're having trouble with your friend or family group, find the 8-year-olds in the group and have them check out the car because they'll get it immediately. And then, of course, they won't test drive it with you, but they'll ride with you. And then they will spread that enthusiasm with everyone around them because they get it immediately.
Right. And you don't have to unbrainwash them about all of the things that you do have to brainwash people about an internal combustion engine car.
Right.
There is so much brainwashing that happens throughout your entire life, from a kid going, vroom, 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 right? All the way up until the point where it's like, yep, and you have to make sure to check the oil and to check the fluids and take it in for maintenance.
I heard a story the other day about a young girl who was driving with someone in an internal combustion engine car, and she had only driven in EVs before. And when this internal combustion engine car was shifting into a higher gear and making sounds, she turned to the driver and said, oh my God, is there something wrong with your car? That's what we need.
Right.
We need that to become the new reality, where if you hear something like that in a car, you're like, there's something wrong.
And there was a period of time where we had just gone on our road trip in the Tesla Model X, and we came home, and I had a Subaru Forester, and I started it up, and it had been a couple weeks, and I was like, oh my God, my car is broken. Because it just felt broken. It felt like every single part of the car was not working properly. And the funny thing was, it was working okay. Wasn't working great, it was working okay. It's such a different world, and we really, really want you to help people experience it. And hey, I know that not all of you have an electric car out there, and I would really, really recommend that if you've been listening to us this whole time, and you clearly understand what's going on, that you get yourself in an electric car. And here's the good news. I have some really good news. People who drive electric cars, by and large, are some of the nicest people in the world right now. I don't know if it's going to be true in the future, okay, but something in the world has happened that we've gotten to this point where the nicest people in the world are all driving electric cars. It is. I remember when I was a kid and my mom was telling me, like, okay, if we get separated at the zoo today, look for a woman with a baby carriage or a dog and go to her. Don't go to anyone else unless it's a police officer. That was what I was told, because that was going to get me to safety. I'm going to put it out to you now. If you see someone in an electric car, they're really, really nice. They are a good person.
I thought you were going to say if you get lost.
If you get lost, yeah. Find someone with an electric car.
Right. Yeah, and I want to do a shout out to Jack, because I appreciate all the work you've done over the years to educate people on how they can convert cars to EVs and get solar and all that great stuff. And then to keep writing a fantastic blog post. I mean, you should go to his website. He's got blog posts on practically everything you could imagine to do with EVs. Really great stuff. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jack, for sharing this with us. And I think that your conspiracy is true.
Right.
I don't think you're a nut or a wacko. This is actually what's going on. We need to wake up to it. We need to make our government respond to what they should be doing, because this is an outrage that we have an SEC that is allowing this to take place when we all know, if we look at the facts, that that is what's happening.
And even beyond that, we should have a government that is looking at climate change as the crisis that it truly is. It is a climate crisis. It is the biggest problem that we are facing as a global society at the moment. And I don't think we've ever faced such an existential threat since the Cold War. Right. I think that was probably the first time that humanity was like, oh, hey, you know what? All of us could die like tomorrow. Yeah. And I think that today we are looking around and being like, you know what? We could all die slowly, one by one, basically, from the equator out. And just like, but not enough people believe it. Not enough people agree with that. And
well, it happens so slowly.
It happens so slowly. And there's like a lot of money that just really, really doesn't want you to believe that.
Exactly.
Who will fund studies to basically lie to you.
Yep.
And who will put out advertisements selling the very thing that will destroy us all. I don't know. It's almost like a conspiracy.
It is. Thank you so much for joining us on this In Depth. We'll see you next week.
Zach, Jesse, you're my heroes. I gotta tell you, I'm not that good. You make me look a lot better than I am. But some comments, of course. They've got 2,500 comments, and 2,300 of them are from idiots. And that's why we don't do 160,000 views. And we're not hip and with it, and we don't have that energy and that enthusiasm. In fact, some might say that we're long and tedious and boring. Well, if you don't know anything about the topic matter, I would say we are long and tedious and boring, but it's not all an accident. We don't want people whose IQ is less than twice their age watching our videos. And there's a really good reason for it. They want to talk to us, and they want to comment on it. And we, from the beginning, had a propensity to attract two groups that I can't be in the room with, I don't want to hear from, I don't want to hear anything about them. And that is earnest individuals with a deep-seated belief that over-unity gain in energy systems is a great idea. And they have an even better idea how to get this perpetual motion thing to work. And they'd like to tell me about it, but they want me to sign an NDA first, because if somebody steals their idea, they can't live with it. And it's always a really stupid version of putting power in and taking more power out. And you would not believe the conversations I've had to have. People come to spend money, want to spend a day telling me this nonsense. And 4 minutes into it, I shoved the check back across the desk. Out, get him out of here. Guys, escort him to the parking lot. I can't do this today. My head won't do that. The other group are really avid, really certain environmental people who worship wood fairies and nymphs and little people in the woods. Kind of an earth worship type thing. They decided to become atheists, but they needed something to replace that. So trees. Trees are good, snail darters are good, all that's good in their world. And they mistake me for being one of them. I'm here to work day and night as co-creator with God in perfecting the most beautiful artistic and technological expression in the universe. No delusions of grandeur here. I don't need any of that crap. Those people don't do anything. They don't spend anything. They advocate for things and demand that other people spend their money to do that. On the other end of the spectrum, there's some really intelligent guys who can go in their garage and change the world. I'm not alone, by a lot. There's 100,000 of these guys in the country, and they are non-trivial. Maybe non-standard, maybe a bit eccentric, but they can change the world. Go back to EVTV, first episode, last 10 minutes, nothing's sure. That's about it for our joyride in the 1957 Porsche Speedster, now in electric version. I thought it was important to show you a little bit about how the car actually drives and what it's like to live with, and to talk a little bit about some of the issues surrounding electric cars. It's timely, apparently. Today, Barack Obama is asked on television for each American family to change one light bulb from incandescent to fluorescent. And I know you're all cheering about that. I'm not. My father installed fluorescent lights in our home in 1959. This is 2009. This is a Fire Sword flashlight. It uses the latest Cree MCE LED. It was made by a guy in his garage up in Oregon. Thanks, Wayne Johnson. Good work, by the way. It's a work of art. This thing puts out 3,000 lumens. These LEDs will last for 50,000 hours. And it's about a third more efficient than a fluorescent light bulb. In the lab, they're already demonstrating about 160 lumens per watt, which is twice what this flashlight will put out. If you want to change a light bulb, change it the right way. In the meantime, there's a lot more at stake here than I think some of these people quite get. We're shoveling boatloads of money overseas right now to people who really don't like us, and who I gotta tell you, I'm not particularly fond of either. And we could be facing some climactic changes that'll make life very uncomfortable for a lot of people, and I'm not talking about our grandchildren. I happen to know there's a couple of 100,000 Wayne Johnsons out there with garages that can make flashlights. And there's a couple 100,000 Jack Rickards out there with garages that can make electric cars. I'm not going to ask you to change a light bulb. I want you to go change the world. And the difference between me and Barack Obama is I already know you can do it. I'm Jack Rickard. Till next time, stay alert. Not a single thing in our mission has changed. So what I found is if I'm long and I'm boring and I'm technical and I just occasionally mention Donald Trump or global warming, I can make almost all these people go away, leaving me with the guys who are quite intelligent, quite motivated, can be motivated by my story to join me in perfecting creation and making what is a greener and better and more efficient and more elegant and more successful planet. We don't need a lot of tree huggers and perpetual motion copper foil helmet people to help us. And I gratefully concede all those guys to Zach and Jesse and Galileo and the whole crew who are very enthusiastic, and they live to get more viewers. They just want clicks for the advertising thing. We don't do the advertising thing. And their video, superbly done. By the way, I'm not being facetious. They do it better than I do it. I'm not going to present anything about Tesla here that's as good as what they did. I'm a fanboy of Now You Know. We're probably going to support them on Patreon or something. We're in. We love you guys. Holy smoke. And I officially concede all those viewers who commented on your video to you. And thank you many times over for that. Of the 2,500 commenters, half of them have never been in a Tesla and don't think electric vehicles are the right idea. Lost in space. Another group loves the idea of Tesla, but they're quite bitter because it's $40,000. That's too much money for them to ever own one. This is like a chanted mantra that used to make sense. It doesn't anymore. When I bought my Tesla Model S in 2013, the number I typed into the website was $107,500. That's an elite car. Most people can't afford it. A $40,000 car, which you can realistically buy a Model 3 for, or $35,000, which you in theory could still buy one for. The average price of all new cars in the United States now is over $37,000. You're chanting a mantra you got from a couple of years ago as if it's still true. It's not. I'm sorry. I never thought I would say this, but $40,000 is not that much for a car. I was grown before I ever bought my first new car, and some of you are going to be stuck on used cars for a long time. Great news. Tesla motors last forever. Tesla batteries last forever. And there's going to be plenty of used cars around. But for a while, they're just not going to go down in value very quick. Which is another astonishing thing. The Nissan Leaf value plummeted, and the Tesla used car values are kind of hanging in there. So the price isn't a thing. Some astonishing theories of finances and the stock market that would form a whole nother class, like copper foil helmets and like tree huggers, but more financial myths and woofies. These are people with fantasies of competence in something they have no clue about. As some of the comments were just deranged, I'm trying to cover the ones that might appear to have some merit. And a lot of them did tell them that that was the best show they'd ever done. And it has gotten more views than they've ever done. So I'm completely on board with Tesla. Well, some things came out in the comments that I'm really in line with. And the biggest one, well, they have one about fit and finish. This is another leftover deal. They had that problem for the first 2 months. It got to be a meme and people are chanting it like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I had a very early Model 3, February 2018. Man, I don't know what you're looking at, but my gaps are fine, my fit's fine, my finish is fine, the doors work fine, the windows work fine, the paint looks great. And even Sandy Munro, after noting fit and finish problems, 3 months later takes another look at a Model 3 and says, well, I guess I was wrong, or they fixed it. It's gone. This is on par with any car being manufactured. So you're chanting leftover news on fit and finish. The one area that I am quite critical of Tesla on, and some of you new to us think I'm simply a raving Tesla fanboy, I've actually been one of their longest running and most successfully accurate critics. And one of the big areas is this concept of repairability and right to repair. They have excellent diagnostics built into the car and deliberately, for no reason I can imagine, will not allow you to access them. They have parts in the Model 3 that are keyed to serial numbers in the MCU. You can't just go change the drivetrain. They have a whole process for a $5,000 process for inspecting a repaired salvage car to certify that it is, up to standards. After you've spent that and been certified, they might mention to you that they still don't allow them at their superchargers. You can't ever put a salvage car back on a supercharger because of their fear of fire. And so I think the whole approach Tesla has to service is flawed, although I've had good experiences with our St. Louis Tesla service center. And they several times came down to Cape Girardeau, done repairs right in my driveway, and nicest bunch of guys I've been around and very knowledgeable on what they were doing. But the salvage car situation is important because it accrues to the brand to have tribal knowledge out there as to how the car works and how to repair the car. And if you cannot repair the cars and put them back on the road, that is a huge depressant to the recovery costs the insurance companies face when they total a car. And that accrues to an astronomical insurance charge for the new cars, which we are now, as I predicted 5 years ago, would be the case. That is the case now. They're very expensive to insure. And so I think there needs to be an entire rethinking of the whole concept of right to repair and support for people repairing the cars and doing maintenance on the cars themselves, of learning about how the cars work themselves, and on the ability to repair the car and get it back on the road if the damage is sufficiently minor to allow that to happen. And I'm calling Elon Musk out on this one. I don't even think this was his thing. He actually announced at one point open sourcing, not just the patents, but the cars, so that people could do what they wanted. I think he's had some bad advice from some lawyers, and whatever advice they've been giving him, it has not worked out for him in a number of cases since anyway. So Elon, relocate the lawyers to another building where they have less access to you, and get your head out of your ass on right to repair. It's important to the future of Tesla and the Tesla brand. What you're doing is not in your interest. And so that's what I'll have to say about that. What else came out in the comments? A lot of it was just astonishing. Bitter things from people who have clearly never been in a Tesla. They've never been in an electric car. I didn't know the debate was still going on. By the way, the debate's not still going on. These are just lost days and confused people. But it was illuminating to me and educational to read the comments on Zach and Jesse's Now You Know show, and to give a deep prayer of thanks. I don't have to put up with any of that crap. So we're going to concede that whole world of viewership to Zach and Jesse, and the Galileo and so forth. We want particular people to watch EVTV, and for them, 2 hours of technical information is not actually long and boring. And they do have the pause button and the speed button. They get to control all that. But I need people that can go into their garage or their shop and do things and have an impact demonstrating what they have done to their friends and neighbors and relatives. The commercial messages no longer work, and only by demonstration and example can you actually bump the planet a few millimeters to the right. And we're going to do that. And we have done that. I mean, victory lap on the EV thing. So we're kind of moving into electric vehicle batteries, and specifically Tesla batteries for solar energy storage. And that's where my head's at these days, and that's where we're going, and we're trying to get people to adopt some of these concepts to innovate in the solar energy storage space. And so our regular viewers, and we have all of them I need, and have for a number of years, but they're a little different, and they don't just type stuff into the ether to get people to look at them. That's kind of pathetic what's going on the internet. It's like this plaintive cry for attention that I think is sick. Get a dog, a golden retriever. They'll love you to death. You don't need strangers on the internet to validate your life or give you affection. And golden retrievers, they're just like automatically the most loving dogs there are. If you're not quite that huggy, pick up a cat. We got a couple of shop cats. I come in, I kick one of them, he meows back. We love each other. It's just sort of a distant kind of tough love type thing. And so there's that. But genuinely and sincerely, thank you, Zach and Jesse. I envy your enthusiasm and your youth and your energy. I do envy that, and I would want that for people I know, not really me. And I think you did a better job presenting my blog than I ever could on video, so I haven't bothered to try. Just simply included yours in this, probably our longest, but hopefully not the most boring video we've ever done, because including your 28 minutes of discussion of our blog. But I do think that there is something sorely amiss in the money markets about Tesla. I don't think it's going to delay them very much. It's certainly not going to take them out or cause them to fail. And I can tell you, since writing the blog, all the negative short sale stories on Seeking Alpha have just dried up. They're not publishing them right now. I guess maybe after a few days of the blog, maybe that'll go away and they can come back. But right now, they're kind of scurried off into the dark corners from whence they came. What can you do about this situation? Be aware of it. Sunlight is the greatest disinfectant. All of these scams and schemes in the minds of men, in the minds of governments, depend on the fact that you're unaware of them, that they happen in those dark places where sunlight doesn't reach. As soon as you turn the spotlight on them, the activity ceases, they scurry off into other corners and immediately go to work on the next nefarious plan. And so you don't have to do a whole lot. If you want to further the cause, buy a Tesla. That's one thing. And if you want to profit, if you can't afford a Tesla, go buy some Tesla stock and hang on for a year or two, and you'll be able to buy all the Tesla cars you want. I didn't pay for any of my Teslas. Tesla did. And that's kind of how you work the deal. That's my advice, but you don't have to do very much except not listen to nonsense and kind of spread the tale. Hey, this is what's going on. When you see somebody post nonsense or some assemblage of the short theme, ask them how much the oil companies are paying them. I'd like to know. I think you'll find it's a trivial amount. I don't think these people are getting millions of dollars to write this stuff. I think we're talking about hundreds of dollars, maybe dozens of dollars. How cheap will you sell your soul? And they kind of dry up in the face of that if they're really doing that. And if not, they just start babbling nonsense, at which point you know that they're homeless, unemployed, and schizophrenic. You're not going to get much good out of that. It'll be interesting to see, because the short game doesn't go on forever. If Tesla does succeed and the stock does go up, there is no limit to the losses for shorts. And eventually that tent will fold, at which point the Tesla stock is going to zoom far beyond what it merits because of the close of the short position. But this short position is not the normal one. It's not driven by investors, and it's not driven from people seeking to profit on the ill fortunes of a company. I think this is being expensed to foster a delay in the inevitable day-by-day decline in the use of motor fuels. And it's an interesting play, but ultimately it may be successful in doing its job of delay, but ultimately it's not going to have that big of an effect on the adoption of electric cars. Also sprinkled among Zach and Jesse's many comments is just simply evidence that a lot of people have very high opinions and very high opinions of their opinions without ever having planted the butt in the seat of the car. They don't know what they're talking about because they don't know what they're talking about. They've never been in the car. And that's, kind of a function of the number of cars sold and demonstrated to your neighbor, friend, jackass brother-in-law, or whatever. That is the process where you actually change the world. Stay with us. There'll be more EVTV.